Good and bad things. That's what we got to tell ourselves. There's always good and bad things about everything. The good thing about the trucking industry is, I guess, as long as you kind of understand the ropes and you understand how to do it, it's the same thing over and over again. It's just breaking straps, strapping things up, follow the procedure, make sure things are done right, safely driving, drive at night if you want to avoid traffic, drive during the day if you want to run into traffic and have four-wheelers cut you off. You have to deal with customers during the day. I prefer the long hauls, preferably at night, so I don't have to deal with like anyone. The bad is that you're away from everybody. So you end up taking, if you're very social like me, I'm a very outgoing guy. I look for opportunities to be with people whenever I can. Luckily, in the case of trucking, unless you're working teams, in which case you just can never, get a chance to see anybody. Because the truck is always moving, or if you do, you have to basically, go to the will of your team driver, and they say, oh, they want to stop someplace. Okay, well, you go stop and see whoever it is at this place. But I'm a solo driver, so I don't have to deal with that. Let me tell you what's been going on with me in my case. So the last time we talked, I was dispatched from Atlanta, returning from home time. They don't dispatch on the weekends, so I was dispatched sometime in the morning on Monday, just before 11 a.m. And I drove down to Midway, Florida. I got there around 4:30, and I basically parked it overnight, picked up the next morning, drove up to, what was it? I think Kinley? No. Yes, it was Kinley, North Carolina. That's where I was able to get to. And that's where I shut down. That's where you and I last talked. Okay. So, got up the next day, drove up through Washington, D.C., ran into a little bit of traffic because I got through Richmond without a problem right before rush hour and went to 295 around. The GPS still routes me straight through Richmond, which they say that you can press the little flag button and then click on email later and email them and they'll make the correction. I did this as soon as I first went through that area, and it still tells me right to go through the middle of Richmond. So I'll tell you this, they've sent out notifications saying we're trying to work with our vendor to update our GPS. I don't think it's updating. If so, I have already submitted this exact thing twice going northbound and once going southbound. And, on 95 going through Richmond. And both times were over 2 months ago. One of them might be barely within 2 months ago, but they were both been a long time ago. And so I did it one more time going north. And I decided to take two different markings, and I copied, because they now released this as a new thing as of like 2 weeks ago. You now have the ability to copy and paste. If you press and hold and it highlights a word, you can now press and hold it again, and it will copy it. If you go to copy, I'm like, great. Now we have this technology that's only been around for 20 years on tablets? Great. I'm glad Schneider's finally catching up. And I'm going to sound bitter, a little bit bitter about this. Normally you hear me praise Schneider for quite a bit. Especially the biggest thing I guess I can praise Schneider for is the opportunity for new drivers to hit the road. But there's a few frustrations I have, and those are going to come out in this episode as soon as I get through what I've been doing. Next day, hit the road, went from Kinley, and it gave me, fuel assignment. No problem. I went ahead and fueled up on the way. Got to Cinnaminson, New Jersey. After I got through the Washington, D.C. area, a little bit of rush hour traffic in the morning probably slowed me down only a total of like 15 minutes. And I got through it, instead of it routing me around clockwise, going 95 north, around clockwise on 495, it routed me counterclockwise. And it wanted me to take back roads. I am against taking back roads in metro areas because when you zoom in on it, it's a lot of, they'll tell you, oh, it's speed limit 45 or it's speed limit 55. Yeah, it is. But then they have nonstop traffic lights. And that's what screws you up. Nonstop traffic lights. If it's a back road and I look at it and zoom in and there's an occasional little town, I know I'm going to slow down to 35 miles an hour and be going through it for 1.5 miles to 2 miles. Not a big deal. But when it's nonstop, back roads, and it may say it gets up to 55 on their website when you look up what is the speed limit of Maryland, whatever number, or New York number, or whatever. But that is one of those things that I have an issue with, is when it routes me on a back road for extended periods of time. I did this in New Jersey a few months ago. I picked up in Cinnamon Sand. They didn't want me to pick up someplace kind of northwest New Jersey and then go to northeast New Jersey and then go to southeast New Jersey. And then I went back to Kearney Point. And I was barely able to get through all those places in one day because it was all back roads. And there were only 50 or so miles, plus or minus a few, from each other. But 150 miles, driving myself crazy from mid to late morning until right before 3:00 p.m. It took me like 4.5 to 5 hours, and I was fast at throwing those straps. And I barely made it to the last one right before they closed. And I was glad he served me and let me offload that. Otherwise, I'd be stuck there for another day. And then I had a smile on my face as I parked in Kearney Point. But to me, those days, they will frustrate you. Something like that, all it was 150 miles, which at 49 cents per mile means you're driving yourself crazy for hours to make $75. You may say, well, that's $15 an hour. Yeah. And guess what? People at McDonald's are making very close to that too. Plus, I'm having to deal with, driving the big truck and whatever. Now, you may turn around and respond and say, yeah, but you chose that. I'm like, yes, I did. You're right. I did. It doesn't mean I have to like doing these little, quick route. And I know a lot of people end up doing stops like that. They'll end up going from place to place to place to place, and you'll have to do stops a lot more than I do. But at the same time, that's one of the reasons I chose pods, is because pods are, going to be longer. And I did do some research, and it says, yeah, a lot of the times you'll end up going from place to place. There'll be a few hundred miles between places. I'm like, well, I'll have a better chance of making better money than I would if I'm making nonstop local deliveries. If I did want to look for another trucking job, and I know I'm getting off topic again, I would look for something driving at night, which I know is going to be low interest, still solo. I'm not about to share a truck with somebody because I have limited enough space. It is, I don't know how team drivers do it. And I would look for something that is either drop and hook, that's long hauling it, or something that's there and back and I'm home regionally. It's regional and I'm home every week. That's probably what I would want to do. Unless it's a dedicated run where every single day, pick up the truck, do something, come back, park. I'm at home. There, back, park, home. Same thing every day. Something like that wouldn't bother me. But, I don't know. So anyway, I got up to Cinnamon Sand on the second day. So I made it there actually early. I made it through a little bit of traffic in Washington, D.C., but it didn't slow me down too much. I expected to run into traffic also in Maryland, but it was smooth sailing after that. The new GPS program is routing me around all of Maryland. Well, I'm sorry to tell you that when they charge for a toll to go through the tunnel and other semis are doing it, I'm going to continue on 95 and I'm going to do that. Or the GPS also, interestingly enough, when there was traffic, I'm assuming on the the loop going around 95 or around Maryland, it didn't route me when I was going back down south. It did not route me to take those back ways on either side. It said stay on 95 going south, and it actually told me to take 895, which is another toll road. I may end up doing that one next time just to see if it's any different. Because as I was pulling off, it looked to me like 985 going south continued straight, and the 95 went off this way and then went down, and then it looked like it, I don't know where 895 merged back in, but makes me wonder, is it a shorter thing? Is the toll higher or lower? I don't know, but I don't know. Fast pass, easy pass rather. Something that I don't have to worry about being a company driver. So anyway, I made it to Cinnamon Sand, New Jersey. Was very, very happy to get there earlier than expected. Dropping off red tags, they, I guess, were at lunch because I got in the line and I broke the straps. And then I waited for probably about 15 minutes, and then they started offloading the semis in front of me. Now, it was a well-oiled machine because everybody had already broken all their straps. So one guy moves up there. 4 minutes later, he's offloaded. Next guy pulls up. He's offloaded in about 4 minutes. I pull up there. I'm offloaded in about 4 minutes. They don't waste time. And that's including the time it takes for the truck to move out of the way, for me to move in, jump out. He signs my paper. And I'm literally entering it on the tablet while he's pulling them off. And he literally just takes them off, turns around, puts them there. Pulled around the corner. There was a bunch of lines out there for of semis, flatbeds. At another PODS location. It makes me wonder if there's a third PODS location there in Cinnamon Sin. Because they were just a bunch of semis that were out there waiting, and all there is PODS around there. Now, it's an intermodal facility, C-Box. But I didn't see anybody carrying any of that stuff when they came back through. Now I wasn't there. I was at the hub, and after I dropped off at the hub, there was only one other pod to do. So I went from Cinnamon Sin. I still did not receive a pre-assignment at this point. I think it was like 11 a.m. No, it was after that. It was 12 something because of the wait and because of waiting for everything to get going. And at this point, I went to the pilot around the corner. The one that has a 6 hours free, 24 hours for $20 in Cinnamon Sin. And I parked and I called my friend Sean, who lives locally, and he came out to visit me and hung out in the truck. Now here is where it gets interesting. A few minutes later, after he arrived, new pre-assignment received. I'm like, awesome. Where am I going? It says starting in Cinnamon Sin, New Jersey. Good. Ending in Houston, Texas. I'm not a fan of Houston. Ever since I went there for a friend's graduation from college 20 years ago. That city is just bizarre. You're driving out the interstate going west, and it says you have to take and the GPS tells you have to take the exit, and you turn right going north to go south on this one particular road. I forgot what it was. That's where our hotel was. Because it said, take this exit and turn onto south whatever road. And I pull off and I loop and take the exit and go south. And then I'm like, where is it? Where is it? I finally call the hotel. I'm like, you're not there. He's like, yeah, we're right off the exit. I'm like, no, I turned. He says, wait a minute. Did you turn south or did you turn north off the exit? I'm like, I turned south. He says, no, you have to go north. I'm like, I have to go north to go on to south, whatever the road is? He's like, yeah. I'm like, so is north south also? He says, yeah. Why? I have no idea, because Texas is Texas. Or at least Houston is Houston. And they just love also, closing roads off for construction. Other cities do too, but whatever. So anyway, but the kicker about this particular thing, starting in Cinnamon Sin, ending in Houston, was it didn't start for 24 hours. Now, I came to find out, I ended up, after my 48-hour layover in Sacramento a couple months ago, I ended up contacting my DTL and saying I was only paid for one. He says, you were paid for one. I said, for one 24-hour period. And he says, oh, let me look it up. And I told him, and he says, so what's your, what other 24-hour period are you looking to get compensated for? I'm like, I was there for 2 days. He said, yeah, but you have to sit for 24 hours before a company will start the detainment clock. I'm like, so I have to be there for 48 hours to get paid for one, or 72 hours to get paid for two. He said, yeah, that's the way it works. Great. Another one of these wonderful policies that is designed to help, but still you got to sit there and wait. It's not like you're paying us a lot to sit there and idle, and not even idling. Idling is a totally different thing. That's on the truck. I'll get into that later. But to me, it's like if you make a driver sit there and they're not being compensated, that's not long enough for you to reset. So sitting me there for 24 hours is completely, if I were in almost any other city, except if I have a friend there, because I have a friend there, because Sean and his family is there, and I love them to death. They are great people. I've only seen them met up their family in a few times in person. But I tell you, you can very quickly assess who in this world are good people and who are not good people. His family are good people. So you can tell this very quickly. And also, it's very easy to talk to them. They'll just talk to you like regular people. They're not trying to put on some fancy show. And some people, that, and I'm really blessed in the sense that everybody I've gone to visit, they're real people. They're not like, well, let me show you everything that's great in my life. I'm going to take you over here and show you this. And this is how successful I am. And this is how amazing. It's not like that. It's just like, hey, check it out, man. This is the real world. And these are real people. I'm like, I love you people. Real people. That's one of the things I love about the movie Almost Famous. Remember when Russell Hammond, he's like, I want real. I miss real. He's on the road. He's playing rock star music and living that lifestyle. He says, I want real. I want to see real people. I want to live, I'm living a fake existence. I want to live real. Well, real people are all over the place. You gotta find people that aren't trying to impress the world. They're just being themselves. I love those people. Those are my people. Anyway, so because they told me that I couldn't start until the following day at between 1 and 2, and right at this point it was not even 1 yet, I was like, you know what? There's a lot of worse things in this world than to be in a city for 24 hours with people that you enjoy the company of, and they tell you have to be there. Fine, don't pay me. That's perfectly fine. In that circumstance, if I was in Sacramento again, I'd be like, stewing and bitter, about being there because there's nothing to do with nobody that I know. Anyway, so I hung out with Sean and his family for 2 days, 1 day. Wasn't long enough. And then they took me back over to the truck. I got in the truck and I made it down the road to Cinnaminson, New Jersey just after 1 o'clock. After I got back to the truck, I did my pre-trip and got over there. Temperature was in the 50s, so not too bad. And when I get there, they say, yeah, your pod is coming in from New York. It's not going to be ready for about 45 minutes. Well, I had called that morning at 10 a.m. and they said, yeah, it's already left New York, but it's not going to be here until maybe 12:30, something like that. So yeah, maybe call or come in around 12:30 to 1 and you should be fine. I'm like, okay. So I showed up there. They were off a little bit. No worries. So I hung out on the clock a little while. And when it arrived, they literally pulled the forklift, lifted it off the semi, brought it over, dropped it on mine. By then, as soon as that truck had pulled up, they went ahead and loaded up the other side, tossed the straps, and I was waiting. And as soon as he offloaded that one and dropped it over on me, I was complete. And I start going south. The thing is, though, this particular job, I looked at it. That was a Thursday. And looking at it, it started in Cinnaminson, New Jersey, had a drop-off in Mobile, Alabama, another one in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and then 2 in Houston. And in Baton Rouge, it was a drop-off and a pickup. As I started driving south, I'm doing all this mental number crunching, and I'd already planned out my trip because, hey, you have nothing else to do in 24 hours. Sean had to do some work. His wife and his son were not, they have other things going on in their lives too. So I did my trip planning, and I looked at it and said, if I make about 600 or so miles, 600 to 650 miles for the second day, I can, even though I'm starting at, let's say 2 o'clock, I would need to drive, let's say 300 miles ish. Because if I can drive about 300 miles and park someplace for the night, then I drive 600 the next day, I have a fighting chance of getting the last 300 miles before Pods closes and do my drop in Mobile. That's going to be good. So I go ahead and I'm thinking about this and say, I got to get there, because if I do what I normally would want to do and drive to Kearney Point, 45 miles or even northeast, or Elkton, Maryland, and then shut down there before you get to Maryland, or Baltimore rather, then that's only going to be like 100 miles, maybe slightly over. That's going to leave me 500 miles that last day. So if I do 600 miles the next day, then I would have 500 miles the last day. And you could say that if it's 2 o'clock that Thursday, I only have 49 hours before I have to do my delivery, or I'm going to miss my window because Pods closes at 3 o'clock p.m. on Saturday. Okay. So I'm looking at this thinking to myself, okay, so if I am I'm going to have to shut down twice for 10 hours. So that's 20 hours of that gone. That leaves me with 29 hours. Well, driving 1,200 miles is going to be a big deal. There's supposed to be a storm system going through in the south. I'm going to go through some rain, so that'll slow down some. It's not going to be a big deal. So I said, I have a few hours that I can try to sacrifice towards in traffic to try to get myself that way. Because the way I look at it also is I'm going to be in the middle of this. I can make it to Mobile, but I'm not going to be able to make it to Baton Rouge and then to Houston. And then, so I'm going to be shut down someplace between, because it's like 250 miles a pop between those, roughly, plus or minus. And so I know I'm going to end up having to reset Saturday until Monday morning. So I'm going to reset. I can sit in traffic a bit. And I go ahead and look it up, and I find that there's a TA just north of Richmond in Ashland, and it has like almost 300 parking spaces, around 300 parking spaces. So I'm like, and everyone has said on the reviews on Google and the reviews in Trucker Path, they all say that there's truck parking there pretty much all the time. I'm like, okay, that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and drive down south. So I drove down south, did my first load securement check, and then I continued to drive down. I got through Maryland before rush hour, but I got to Washington, D.C., and this time I was sitting in it. Sitting down it takes me on the counterclockwise route going back around towards 95, which is the way that I was surprised it didn't take me last time. And boy, did it just sit there and not move. Then you're like, okay, come on. Oh, we're creeping along. Good. We're going 5 miles an hour. And then it stops. Oh, good. We're going 5 miles an hour. Then it stops. Oh, good. We're going 5 miles an hour. Then it stops. Then it's like, oh, cool. It's starting to pick up. And I'm looking at the GPS, which, by the way, if you hit the traffic, if you go into settings and you click or you click on the layers button and you click to enable traffic, it will automatically turn itself off again after only a few miles or after a certain amount of time. So you have to constantly turn it back on to see traffic. It's so annoying. The GPS program is terrible. So anyway, sitting there in rush hour, sun sets, I drive into Ashland, find a parking spot with no problem. Great. I shut down there. Next morning, I get up 5 a.m., I think it was, and I drive through Richmond. And this is Friday morning, no problems. Get all the way through there. Driving down south, as I'm approaching Atlanta, I'm thinking, you know what? It's only going to be 550 or so miles. With the miles I've already done, that would only leave me having to go to get to Mobile only about 280 miles, I think it was, based on everything else I've driven out of that first leg, which was like just below 1,200 miles. So I said, you know what? I can park the truck in Atlanta and go see my family. So I did. But I didn't drive all the way down to the Schneider OC. This time, there was so much traffic in North Carolina, in South Carolina, in North Georgia going down 85. I was driven crazy by it. I was like, you know what? By this point, I'm going to get to Atlanta and I'm going to end up sitting through traffic and just waiting and waiting and waiting. So this time on the north side of Atlanta, I stopped in Brazelton and I said, I'm going to stop here and see if somebody in the house can come and pick me up. Luckily they did, and saved me from having to drive down into Atlanta and then turn around and drive right back out to drive to the house just to turn around and go back later. So my partner was able to pick me up. So she came and picked me up and took me home. And I was there through the evening. We ate dinner. And then that night, she took me back to the truck. And I left early in the morning, 3.5 hours later. Maybe 4 hours. Drove all the way through Atlanta, no problem. Drove right by the Schneider OC again, or that exit at least. Made it through, went 85 south, went through Montgomery, and then went south there to Mobile. Torrential downpour for the last maybe 75 minutes or so. And by the time I got to Mobile, torrential downpour, but it was 9:30 in the morning. Brain starts working. I've only gone 300 miles. I say, you know what? I have 5.5 hours to see if I can make this delivery in Mobile. Not in Mobile, in Baton Rouge. But the big question is, On a weekend, these truck stops sometimes fill up earlier. So if you're not there by sometimes as early as noon, sometimes earlier than that, you're not going to get a space. So I quickly go into Compass, the internal program we have that a lot of resources are on through Schneider. And I look up drop lots in Baton Rouge because that's where I have to drop. And there ends up being one less than 10 miles away from my drop. So I'm like, perfect. I will go ahead and stop there. So that's where I currently am. I drove on out. There was a traffic jam where a car carrier, the tractor had caught on fire. The cars looked fine. But that slowed everything down for a while. Even stopped for a while. Finally made it to Baton Rouge, did the drop there. I pull into the lot there. This is funny. I pull into the lot and I do a right angle back into this little small area. He comes by and picks up. And as soon as I'm done there, I say, hey, you mind if I use your restroom real quick? He says, no problem. Go inside. As I'm walking back out, walking toward the truck, I realize on the other side of the pods, it's a little narrow, but I could have pulled straight through and straight out, so I didn't have to back. Whatever. It probably helped that I can practice backing. Pods, you don't do a whole lot of backing. And then a lot of the times I finish early enough that I don't do a lot of backing into truck stops either, so it could probably not hurt me. You guys know me in the alley dock. It's about probably 2/3 of the time. I get it in there just fine. It's a little dirty. It might take me going forward and backward a couple of times just to be happy with being centered. But if I take it slow and just pay attention to what I'm doing and which I always do anyway, and then just cruise straight on back and just I can back in there no problem. One of those things, if I'm ever driving a van and doing a van account, it's going to be one of those fun things of having to, well, didn't you ever do any backing? Yes, I did, but it was pods. It wasn't a whole lot of it. Anyway, back up to a dock, I'm sure is going to be one of those things that I'll end up figuring out, just like everything else. You do it every day. All right, so I got to Baton Rouge, and then I drove over here and shut down for the night after having driven almost 500 miles. About 500 miles. It was plus or minus a little bit. Or maybe it was closer to 600. It was closer to 600. I don't remember. I've already erased it off my board, unfortunately. But anyway, I stopped for the night, or for the reset, I should say, and now I'm in a drop lot. It's dusty. It's not a big deal. Big thing I miss about drop lots is that there's no readily available bathroom. There's a porta potty over there, which is great. Great. And then I have no food options or anything. I mean, they're doing construction over there, so there's that. There's over that direction. There's a whole bunch of cat bulldozers, and it's a whole yard full of that. Over there, there's some industrial plant. There's some smoke coming out of there. I don't know what's going on. You see the other the Schneider trucks behind me over there. Drop lot, yay! But you know what? It means I don't have to deal with anything. I have plenty of water, and I have plenty of food, and I have a bathroom. I don't have showers, but I have that Ignite wipes. This will be fine, I guess, for a couple of days. They got to be. Hey, I've gone through worse, and I'm not getting out of here very often. When I get out, I just walk over there to go to the bathroom and then come back. And it's only 49 degrees right here. So inside the truck with the heater on, when I turn it on, it's off right now. It's off. I turn the heater on. It works well. It heats up. Then I turn it off and I'm fine. So all is well. Tomorrow morning, I will get up and then I'm trying to figure out Houston, because Houston has rush hour. This place I'm going, I've been to before. I think it's the one I've been to before. It's on the west side of Houston, so I have to drive through Houston. So I'm thinking about changing my ETAs to later morning for two reasons. Number one is I don't want to deal with rush hour traffic and sit there if I don't have to. I'd rather leave here, get there later. But then that means that there could be screw-ups and stuff on the interstate getting me there. From Baton Rouge to Houston, there's not a whole lot of cities. If I got up early and I got to Houston sitting there at 6 a.m., though, I'm going to be waiting for an assignment, waiting for a pre-assignment. They're not going to just suddenly expedite because I happen to be there earlier. they're going to send it to me when they're ready, when they're good and well to send it to me. But I'll at least have about 64 hours. And if I sit there on the clock, then I'm going to be deteriorating those. And the company didn't want you doing that. They sent out this message a couple of days ago saying, remember that if you are stopped at a customer site, you should go to off-duty or go to off-duty sleeper. I've talked about this in the past, and this is going to segue me into this. Schneider is obviously a company that wants to make money. They want to be profitable. But they are not always the best at communication with us. And I don't know if it's just this division or if it's Schneider as a company. But what I look at is I can drive from here to Houston. And if I arrive in Houston in late morning, like after about 10 a.m. or so, I can make it through Houston and do my job at 11 a.m. By 11 a.m., hopefully I'll get a pre-assignment and then I could just pick up or drop off and whatever and then leave. That's where I am on that. One issue I have, and having talked to other drivers, some companies, if you are working and you're logged in on the clock, you can go to off-duty sleeper and they will pay you because you were still at a customer site, or they will pay you because you're still someplace doing something. One company paid $18.50 per hour if you were technically off the clock between your start time and you're within your 14-hour clock. When you're logged on and logged off, because that's when you do your logs. They will log you in and out on your own, but they want you to stay on top and preserve your drive time. So if you're not securing a load or strapping or something like that, and you log off, they will pay you for that time, just like they pay you if you're on the clock doing something. Schneider didn't do that. They want you off the clock. It's not like $10 an hour is going to make them a non-profitable company. You could argue they have so many drivers, it adds up. It does add up. You're right. And I know not all companies pay an hourly rate. They only usually will pay you when the wheels are turning. But for that reason, I would think that if we're on the clock, we're on the clock. It's like every other company that I've ever worked for. If there's no work, but you're still at work, you're on the clock. Schneider doesn't see it that way. They say, oh no, you're living in your house. Just log off and go into your house. That is a bit annoying to me. And they love sending out these emails that complain to us about different things that we as a fleet are doing or not doing, even within pods. One of the big ones that I was a bit frustrated about that only came out a couple of days ago, I think it was right as I was driving through and dealing with some of the traffic in Washington, D.C. This just like totally made me so happy. It said, effective immediately, pods locations. And it gave us a list of these cities, and it says, you write these down. You're responsible for knowing them. Great. What if a new driver joins pods? They're not going to have access to those cities. You tell us to write it down. You need to write it down someplace and give it to us. Just like when I first started this account, there was a lot of things I didn't understand. And they would just treat me like I should know this already. They was like, well, you need to do this. Why don't you? I'm like, no one has told me I'm supposed to submit ETAs. And they're like, well, here's the form. They sent it to me. They sent me the thing and says, do it. I'm like, okay. And then they said, we'll go over this with you and we'll go over it later. I'm like, okay. They never did. I just read the form and figured it out. But still, things like this, if you want us to know it, you got to tell us also. You can't just expect us to know it. That's one thing that I think there's a miscommunication that they need to, if there's something important, they need to keep an active log in a list someplace and they need to send it to us in a file. Just like I've said from the very beginning, I need to understand where the policies are. I need to understand them. And slowly I start to learn what some of the policies are. When they email us out and say, you're responsible for knowing these. By the way, you could find it in this obscure, this very difficult to find place. If you have to go into Compass, then you click on driver resources, then driver FAQ, then go to pay, and then you can learn about something. I'm like, who in the world would know to do that? I've gone through all the menus and there's a lot of documents there. Am I required and expected to go through all of that when they didn't cover any of that in training? Apparently, but they don't want to pay us for it because they want us to preserve our drive time. But yet if we're on the clock, then they say, why are you on the clock? Why are you sitting there idle? They send out another email saying there's a lot of people forgetting to log off when you're not actively working. So it means that when I finish before my reset, like at the very, very tail end of when I finish my time, I really like to use that time because I know I'm not going to be driving the rig anymore. I like to use that time to read some of the documents that I have earmarked and said to myself, made a list on my whiteboard saying, this is what you need to read. This is what you need to familiarize yourself with, because as I start to learn what I should be doing, I like to learn it. But I don't want to do it actively in the middle of the week. I have managed to get by for the past 5.5 months without knowing it. I might as well survive another couple of days. And that way I'm spending the last few hours I have in my 70-hour clock before I reset it on that. But they apparently sent out an email saying drivers are forgetting to log out. Now, I told you a couple of weeks ago, I forgot to log out. But as soon as I came back over, I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to log out. I go in and I select off duty. And then I go back and because it's the same day and I realized the error, I went back in and I was able to set my post trip to, what was it, about 17 minutes, I think, that day. And then it said, okay, there's another entry that's being created now. What is this one? I said off duty. And it says, okay, are you sure you want to change this from on duty to off duty? I said yes. And then it changed that 2.5 to 2 hours and 45 minutes to off duty. So that would have been $20 some odd. But you know what? I still follow the rules. But that's when I like to use that time at the end of the week to read the documents and stuff. That way, if I need to look it up, God knows I give enough time during the week planning out my trips, which I should technically do on the clock too. But I don't want to start driving into my drive time and then every single day say, well, there's an hour at the end of my day before I reset my clock, because a lot of the time I'm trying to get to the pod's location the next day before they close. And so I will do my trip planning and stuff off the clock, which you might argue you shouldn't do. You should do it on the clock. But if I go on the clock for that stuff and I look at weather and I look at traffic and I look at all that kind of stuff, wherever I happen to go, and I look at all the different routes I could take and find the best one for that time, I could be late and not do my drop and have to wait another 24 hours, and that's going to delay me in my pay. I would rather sacrifice an hour here or there, or 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it happens to be, every single day if it needs to be, in order to get to my drops on time. Or find a way to pay me offline, or pay me off my clock. Pay me as a regular job. But because I'm driving, they say, well, it has to be part of your clock. You know what, though? If I'm awake, I'm awake. And I understand the FMCSA and the DOT restrictions and the stuff, and they don't want you doing anything over 14 hours and then get behind the rig. But you know what? I'm going to be sitting there in the back watching the movie. Like right now, I hit pause on Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, which I watched Fellowship of the Ring yesterday, in order to do this. But at night, I'll watch a movie. I'll watch a TV show. I'll be up for another 3 or so hours. I'll be doing other things. I might as well, while I'm doing those things, do research and stuff on my phone while I'm watching it. I'll say, okay, traffic tomorrow is going to start at this time in this city. And then I would do the same thing in my house. So what's the difference? It's me doing it off the clock. There too, in a regular day job, the restrictions on drivers are ridiculous, in my opinion, to a certain degree. Some of them are for safety related things, I understand. But if I'm going to be awake and I'm going to be alert, and I am going to schedule the same amount of downtime every single day where I get 7 hours of sleep, or six hours and change, or whatever I need to, what I feel I need, I then will sleep that, get up in the morning, do my pre-trip, leave, whatever, and I'll still get my 10 hours. So I'll do something for, 2.5, 3 hours. Then I'll go to sleep. Then I wake up and do my pre-trip and leave. I'm not wasting time. But at the same time, that 3 hours in the evening is still my time. Am I supposed to do all of the stuff that's related to driving when I'm living in a semi? Am I supposed to be doing all of this on the clock? In all the other day jobs I've had, I've never done everything on the clock. I've gone home and done research. I've gone home and done videos, or I've gone home and gone into a bunch of apps and looked up things too. Some of the restrictions on drivers, I think, are a little extreme. And who knows, in the next few years, maybe we'll get a president that will do what they say they're going to. One of the reasons I know Vivek Ramaswamy, who just dropped out of the Republican race for president against Trump, I know one of the things whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or, non-affiliated, or don't care, or whatever, One thing I do really like about what Vivek said is that we should have people in charge of things that know about it. If you're going to be in the Department of Agriculture, maybe get a farmer who understands it, not someone who sat there in an office and just, sat there in an office their entire life and said, what's important to farmers? Well, I think this. Or someone in charge of transportation that has actually been a driver. That's the one that really, rings home with a lot of truckers. If you want to put someone in charge of transportation that's been a driver, cool. That's much better than saying you've been assigned to be in part of transportation. Oh, I didn't want to be part of transportation. All right, well, let's learn. I want to keep I want to keep these truckers, whatever. And they make up rules and stuff that need to affect us, even though it's not what is going to be best if we were in charge by someone that was who had experience driving. Anyway. So one of the things I've kind of talked about a little bit as I've been driving through these areas where it's been freezing temperatures is idling. They sent out an email, one of these wonderful messages they sent us out complaining about our idle times. Well, as you guys know, I try to keep my idling to a minimal, keeping the auto start stop button on this international LT. I know on a Freightliner Cascadia it's Opti idle, but they always send out, oh, you need to hit your Opti idle button. Okay. The international LT people just need to know it's auto start stop. But this Opti idle setting, it will basically run everything inside the truck off of your batteries and a power inverter. And then if the battery falls below a certain cranking voltage or something like that, it will automatically turn itself on and allow it to refill the battery. But they constantly send out, you should not be idling, you should not be idling. And they sent this message out when there is Winter Storm Finn and Winter Storm, I think, Elmer going through, and everybody is basically, the whole country is put into freezing temperatures. And they love to say, we've noticed in the past week or so, everyone's been idling more. You need to keep this down to a minimum. You need to use your Opti. I'm like, okay, I want to look this up. Where and then finally they made the mistake and actually told us where we could find their idling policy. I looked it up and it did not tell us a whole lot about idling. It just gave us some wonderful facts. Like, for example, it tells us extension cords must be 12 gauge or lower. That makes sense. Because lower gauge means higher voltage and amps can go through it. Not over 50 feet in length for block heaters. Short idling for every 4 to 6 hours actually decreases the battery cranking power and does not provide necessary heat to keep the engine warm. Who cares about the engine if it's sub-freezing temperatures? It's the driver we need to prioritize. But I understand keeping the engine warm also, because that's the company perspective, and that's just our money maker, what we use to drive to make money. Idling the engine is only way to keep your fuel from gelling when temperatures are below zero. Doesn't say if that's Fahrenheit or if that's Celsius. Your fuel remains warm as it's pumped through a running engine and back to the tank. If idling is absolutely necessary due to extreme cold temperatures for cab heat, in extreme cold temperatures, always idle at 600 RPMs. Keep your truck in tip-top shape by idling only when necessary. Okay, then you have to go into another area and you need to look up what is considered to be dangerous temperatures, because it didn't tell you. Well, this is one of the things I had to go and find. And I found this in the winter weather driving thing, which is different than the thing they emailed out. They emailed us out a document that was only a few pages, and it said, go to find Compass if you want to find this document or others. The funny thing is, it's in Compass, it's got like 40 to 50 pages. And inside of Compass, it says, tractor at an OC or designated maintenance facility. If the temperature is going to be below freezing, the tractor should be shut off and plugged in while the engine is hot. Never have the heat element plugged in when starting or running the engine. Heating element will be damaged. Okay, so that's if at an OC or a maintenance facility. I have not been to an OC yet that allows us to, that has a place for it to park in the parking lot. Nor do I think they have the facility for every single trucker to plug in their truck. And if they did, it would mean pulling out an extension cord longer than 50 feet for every single one of us, because they don't put those parking spots anywhere close to the parking lot. And if they did, We would then have to have every truck that drives through the parking lot drive over these cables. Doesn't seem like the most intelligent thing here. I love this policy. Only in rare cases of extremely cold temperature should the engine be left at idling at an OC. Interesting. The decision to idle tractors in the yard will be made by line haul services if and when needed. Otherwise, tractors should be shut off and then plugged in. How are we supposed to plug in? We can't plug in. We do not have the facilities to plug in a truck when the engine is hot. So I'm going to completely ignore every bit of it, what it says inside of here, because you cannot plug in. If you say 12 gauges or lower, that means that it can take 24,000 or 2,400 watts of power through there. If an AWG 14 isn't good enough, which can take 1,800 watts, then that means you need to get all the way up to between 1,800 and 2,400 watts. That is going to be a lot of power. You cannot do that for every truck parked in your lot. So that's when this next thing comes into to apply. Tractor parked away from an OC or designated maintenance facility between plus 40 degrees Fahrenheit and negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The tractor should be shut off and plugged in while still hot. So we're supposed to somehow walk into a truck stop and say, hey, do you have some place I can plug in my truck and block heater? Again, driving across the cable, the plug, the extension cord that's not going to be over 50 feet. Where can I possibly plug in a truck? At the fuel island? Think, Schneider, when you write these things. If the temperature gets below negative 10 degrees, the tractor should be idling at 600 degrees. If the unit cannot be plugged in, the tractor should be idled at 600 RPM. When the temperature is less than plus 10 degrees Fahrenheit, the tractor will be shut off for longer than 5 to 6 hours. If the temperature is below negative 10 degrees, keep the tractor running at 600 RPMs. I don't know what the difference is between idling and running. But here's the thing. On the International LT, I did a short video talking about how you idle the International LT, and it requires you going in here, pressing a button here, pulling out the parking brake, pressing and holding, pressing the parking brake back in. That's how you have to do it. Otherwise, it doesn't do what's called throttle. It does not throttle the engine properly. I have an issue with this. It finally tells us if it's less than plus 10 degrees Fahrenheit. When I was in temperatures of between 2 and 6 degrees, they were sending out those emails saying, you need to not idle your truck. And I was in one of the warmer areas of the country. There was a place in Wyoming that got down to negative 28 degrees. And there was a lot. If you look at the temperature map of the United States, there were people posting stuff about the winter storms and being in sub-freezing temperatures down into like the negative 10s, negative 20s. And yet those drivers could be following the company policy outlined in Compass and telling us to idle our trucks. But yet they're going to be complained at by their DBL or DTL, drive business leader or drive team leader. I have an issue with this. Just like I have an issue that I have come to realize with their, what do they call it? I'm going to have to look it up because it's in Compass again. It is what they consider to be their performance increase for miles per gallon and for, great, now the thing is just frozen up. Great. Thank you, tablet, for freezing up on me. People online say it's because it's an Android. No, it's because it's a cheap Android without a lot of resources, and this company loves to just overload it with crap that has to constantly run and choke out all the available resources. Okay, so I got a 5 out of 5 performance score for MPG, miles per gallon, for my first 3 months out, which gave me a bonus of 5 cents per mile. I thought it was, if you got a score of 5, you got 5 cents per mile. 4 was 4 cents, 3 is 3 cents. And this is just if you're within like 0.2 of the idle. Like if they want you to be ideal is like they want you to drive, let's say 7.2 miles per gallon, whatever it happens to be, I forgot. If they want you to achieve that and you hit better than that, you'll increase it if you are like within a certain range. Like if you're 0.2, it might be 1 point, 0.2 to 0.4 might be 2 points. And if you get it to 5 points, you get a 5 cent bonus. But if you're 2 to 4, you get a 2 cent bonus. The reason I have an issue with this is because when it was summer driving, I had no problem in the world idling, only when driving. And traffic wasn't nearly as much an issue. I have noticed in winter weather, you end up driving slower, not just from traffic, but you drive slower on interstates. You sit longer in bad traffic. Because there's a lot more people skidding out on the road due to ice, and people drive slower because of ice. That does what? It hurts your MPGs. So I will reset whenever I remember, I reset my trip odometer when I do a fuel up. And I have noticed that in colder weather, my miles per gallon has gone down. Not much, but it's gone down by, a couple of tenths per, a couple of tenths. Like, I think my MPGs back in summer and when I was driving in fall, it was around 8.2. And then as we started getting into colder weather and I started seeing those temperatures and I started slowing down due to going through areas and driving through snow or driving through freezing rain, slush, interstates that are driving slower, I noticed that it started going down to 8.1, then 8.0. Now it's at 7.9. This week, because it has been thawing more, I'm back up to 8.1. So apparently my performance with the company that gives me an added incentive of an extra cent or two, or gives me up to 5 cents, which is what I got before, but now I'm down to 2 cents bonus, mainly because of the weather. My driving style has not changed. You've heard me say in the past, stand on the gas pedal. Well, I don't mean literally standing on the gas pedal. What I mean is I have it in cruise control. As I'm driving down the road, as long as it maintains 65 miles per hour, cool. If it starts to drop below that, I will hit the gas pedal and start to increase, and I'll pause a little bit. I'll hit more until it goes back up to 65, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit here for a moment. And then as soon as I get going down a hill or hit it on the straight way or something like that, I will ease my foot back off, and it will usually pick right up again. Sometimes it will even jump up to 66. I'm like, cool, let's keep going with that. Sometimes it jumps up to 67. But I don't literally just, put the equivalent of a brick on the gas pedal all day. I just want to make sure I maintain that 65 if I'm going in speed limits of 70 to 80. And the conditions allow me to. But apparently, I looked at my metric, and it's barely below what it would take to have 5 points. So I get 2 cents. That is something I am not happy with because it is directly related, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing about restarting my trip odometer and looking at it. It was fine because I wanted to make sure that I had to set myself up for success and potentially got that bonus. So when I hit it 5 out of 5, I was like, awesome, good. That's because I'm driving the way I'm driving. Good. The company likes that. My MPGs are above the average. We're good. I haven't changed my driving style. If anything, I've probably gotten better at managing things. And yet I now look at it and it's either one of two things, because I don't think my driving style has changed that much. If anything, it's probably gotten better. I think it's either due to winter driving and driving slower in more extended periods of time in things like, driving in the snow, or it's because the truck was approaching a preventive maintenance appointment. And I started to report that there were some issues that I was running into with the truck. Remember, I mentioned that in the power steering fluid, it started to leak a little bit. Well, they've done a preventive maintenance. They've cleaned everything up under there. It looks like it's brand new. Well, almost. But the truck is driving better. And the sensors seem to be working better. I will also say that since going in for my maintenance appointment, the truck has only a couple of times put on the brakes when it's detected somebody way in front of me putting on their brakes. Not necessarily in my lane, but I've also hit the brakes at the same exact time. And I've noticed it puts on the brakes a fraction of a second before my foot hits it. And it's not like a slam on the brakes. It's just like putting them on. But it hasn't done like seen a car on the side of the shoulder and said, whoa, done the haptic whatever thing and then freaked out and put on the brakes. It hasn't done that. Going down a hill and then up the hill, it doesn't suddenly put on the brakes anymore. It hasn't done that since I've been back on the road. That's a good thing. So the truck seems to be probably working better because of the preventive maintenance between the maintenance and the winter weather. I think that's the reason why my MPGs fell down and went down below, and now I'm not getting the extra 3 cents per mile, which is annoying. I understand companies, you have to have metrics, you have to have numbers to represent things. It's not something that makes me happy, though. And you may say, well, you're only losing 3 cents. Yeah, it adds up. If I drive 3,000 miles in a week, which doesn't usually happen because they don't assign me that much, if I drive that, it's $90 for 3 cents. You may say, well, you got to be even easier on the gas or during winter months or whatever. Yes, I get it. That's for safety. You don't want to just barrel down the Interstate 65 if it's snowed over. You got to go slower, right? But then your MPGs are going to go down. Anyway, one of the things that I found also interesting in talking to one of the pods locations, it was actually the pods location I went to in Tennessee right before I went back home. And I had to think about it for a bit and then compare that to my notes with Schneider itself. He said, well, we informed Schneider that our pods locations in Tennessee had closed down. He told me that after the day before in Atlanta, pods had told me that. He said, by the way, these locations are closed. I wonder why pods didn't tell us. Or if pods told Schneider, why didn't Schneider tell us? There's a breakdown in communication where pods may have told Schneider, but Schneider might not have told us. Or maybe pods didn't communicate it with Schneider and the different pods locations communicated it with pods and they just held that information. I would assume it seems like a thing that pods would notify Schneider, and Schneider, for whatever reason, didn't tell us. There seems to be a disconnect in communications someplace. I don't know where that is. But considering that they just took one of our DTLs off of this account because and talking to her in the past, they said that she was managing like 80 or so drivers, and the other guy was too. That means that now he's managing 160 drivers by himself. I was just talking the other day while waiting to another company driver, and he said, yeah, we just lost one of our dispatchers too, one of the people that we talked to. And I said, really? He says, yeah, it means we're only down to 3. And I said, well, how many drivers do you have? He said, get this. He said, we have 60. I'm like, you have 60 drivers? Yeah, in the pods account. And I'm like, you have 60 drivers and you have 3 people now in charge. He said, yeah, we did have 4. I'm like, I have 1 for 160. And other people back him up every now and then, but still, it seems almost like there's a little bit of penny pinching going on here. That's just my speculation on the front lines. And I could be wrong. It may have been an exaggeration. It may have been a lot more drivers that he had in his account, and maybe he just was overestimating the amount of dispatchers they have, or maybe the dispatchers do other accounts too, but that's just how many they have in the pods. I don't know how it is. What I will say is that communication through the tablet, there seems to be a lot of information that comes from higher ups, like our head guy and our DTLs that says, you should be doing this, you should make notes of this, you need to be doing this, and then they don't tell us how. If they say, well, they'll put in a message that says, call me. I sit there and wait on hold for an hour or two, and then they still don't answer. If I send them an email, they won't call. They'll say, call me. And sometimes I get through, sometimes I don't. So most of the time I don't call. I will not call unless I absolutely have to. Like last week in Tennessee when it says call me, I'm like, great. I'm going to sit there and on hold forever. And luckily they happen to pick up. It's the first time in a long time they've actually picked up early. If I were to call right now, no one's going to be there. It's going to be Schneider after hours support, which, and there's memes about this in the Schneider forums online. After hours support is a joke. It doesn't do anything. The meme that stands out the most accurate is, a little devil is talking to, it's supposed to be the devil and God. And it's a devil talking to a guy with a halo over his head. And he says, please let me make something. And God says, fine, you can make something. And then, it has, the devil down below smiling, and it has a driver saying, thank you for calling Schneider overnight support. And that's pretty much accurate. They can't do anything. They say, well, let me see if I can contact your DTL. They've gone home for the day. I'll send them a message. I'm like, great, thanks for that. I just sent them a message. doesn't do anything when they receive a message from you and a message from me and they're not there. Anyway, there's a disconnect on the communication. So much as drivers need to be doing this. Well, look at your own damn policy and realize that we're allowed to idle if the temperatures are below positive 10. So if I end up idling, don't complain at me about it and then have me have to throw policies back up at you in, when you end up telling me you need to research the policy. It's right here. And I look at it and it tells me that I am following the policy. You're just pushing it a different way. That to me is annoying. To me, I shouldn't have to go through some convoluted way when someone accidentally tells me how exactly I can find the policy on this. I've asked for policies before. Tell me where the policies are listed and no one responds back, either to my emails or through messages through the tablet. I've called up and talked to driver services and they said, yeah, it's on the tablet someplace. Let me see if I can find it. They can't. And then they don't know what to tell me or they don't know how to tell me. Give me a policy book like what you gave me with the driving manual. Then I can find things. Just like their number one policy about distracted driving. They give us, you're not allowed to wear a headset. You're not allowed to wear the earbuds or any of that kind of stuff because distractions. They don't want you distracted driving. That's fine. I'm totally on board with that. As you guys know, I won't drive distracted. Even when it would be so convenient to just do something real quick. I still don't do it. There are times that I hear my phone behind me, which is always back up in there, and it's vibrating, and I'm like, oh, I so wish I could just, put a headset on and take that phone call. Like everyone else does. You drive down the road and you see everybody wearing the blue parrot headsets. I so wish to a certain degree that I could put it on my head and make the choice myself as if I answer or not. But I have not answered any phone calls, nor will I when I'm driving because the company does not want you to do that. I will follow their rules on that. But it is annoying because they don't want us driving distracted, yet they give us a tablet that constantly crashes on us. The GPS program. I go up there, I load it up, and I say, okay, starting driving down the road. As soon as I pull out, sometimes it will crash and put it back on the main screen. I'm like, so I go back into the tablet, and it's just on the screen. If you go faster than 4 miles an hour, it automatically jumps to a screen, the lock screen, and it says you have to press this to get to the navigation. You press that button to open up navigation, but the loading screen is apparently not the navigation screen, so it then throws back to a thing that says, you're driving, you should the only thing you're allowed to open is the navigation. So then it throws you back on the same screen. So I look at it, I press the button again, it starts to open up the navigation program, and then it crashes again. And it doesn't crash, it locks the screen again. So sometimes I'll give it a couple minutes. Then I'll hit it again, and then by then in the background, it will have opened up. But it puts this pop-up on the screen that says, you can't find your destination right now. And because there's a pop-up over the navigation screen, it throws you back into the screen lock. So I press the button and it then brings me back to the navigation screen, and I press that button OK real quick to get it to go away. So I'm looking at the navigation screen, and then it pops the stupid same pop-up again and then puts me back in the lock screen. I'm like, you want to talk about non-distracted driving? That tablet is causing distractions. If it didn't crash, no problem, drive down the road. I don't need to do anything more than glance at it every now and then to confirm that the roads that I'm driving down, up down the street and stuff like that, are not going to curve too sharp or something like that. As I'm approaching a curve, I'll glance down at the tablet and say, okay, that's a really sharp turn, or that's not as sharp of a turn as I was expecting it to be. It's a prep thing. It helps you prepare. But when the tablet constantly crashes and it says, pull over to the side of the road, am I supposed to pull over to the side of the interstate every single time the thing crashes? And then accelerate again, pull into a rest area, which they don't give very often, not as often as the thing crashes, or pull into a truck stop every exit, I'm never going to make it anywhere. So as I'm driving down the road and there's no one in front of me in the middle of the night, I'll go tap. And then I look at it and it's like pop-up crash back to the lock screen. I'm like, brilliant. Thanks a lot for this tablet and the way it performs. That in the GPS constantly loses a signal. And it has to tell me, your tablet has lost GPS signal. Please connect up. I'm like, how in the world am I supposed to connect up on a GPS navigation? What am I supposed to do? Bring the tablet out and start waving around and hope it connects to things? It's sitting here in the front of the truck and it's in front of the window. You should be able to connect to it. It's the tablet being stupid and losing its connection. Or it will lose the internet connection and it has to tell me, your tablet has lost the internet connection. Please connect the tablet. I'm like, driving down the road, if I happen to glance up here, I can see that there's a full signal. So it basically means the tablet, for whatever reason, stopped communicating with the truck, and give it a couple minutes, it will automatically connect back up again. If not, I will fix it at the next thing. But then it throws up this red screen that says, if you're driving a CMV, please pull over and connect your tablet to your trucks to make your electronic logs are working correctly. It loves popping this red screen up, and then in its robotic voice, it will blab at me. I have started to leave the sound off on the tablet because I hate hearing that sound. It loses the connection all the time, and then it tells me this about electronic logs. Here's a little thing for you to acknowledge about this. It loves to put me in driving mode. That drive line where it doesn't pay you per hour or whatever, it loves throwing you into drive. If I'm driving down the road, it will be in drive. If I come to a stop and try to change into load securement check, it will sometimes be lacking. The whole tablet has to be restarted before it will allow me to do it because the screen's locked up. Yet, if I'm able to get the screen to do that, if I'm pressing it, I'm like, it's not working fine. You know what? It will automatically, as soon as I drive over 5 miles an hour, it will automatically turn itself into driving no matter what. It doesn't stay on duty doing a load securement check. Oh, it knows to go into drive real fast. It will do that the instant it detects that you're going faster than 5 miles an hour. But as soon as I pull up and I'm stopped at a truck stop or I'm stopped at a rest area or a way station, wherever it happens to be, if I go in there and try to make a setting change, it just sits there and it does not respond. To me, if I'm stopped, completely stopped, even with, the truck in neutral, the brakes are set, the truck is off, and it still sits there when I press the button. And then I give it a couple minutes. I press the button again. It still doesn't work. Doesn't press the moment. Fine, I'll restart the tablet. It comes up. Then it's going to, finally allow me to make the adjustment, and then it starts my clock. Sometimes it will start the clock from the point that it detects that you stopped before. And it'll say, okay, you're 1 minute and 30 seconds in. Sometimes it says, okay, you're at 7 seconds now, 8, 9, 10, and it will count. That is highly annoying to me. The tablet, since this new GPS has gone in there, it has gotten so much more annoying. It is actually a distraction now, the way it currently functions. So if Schneider has not finished it by the time this airs, 98 days from now, please note your tablet is a distraction. You want to be against distracted driving? Fix the damn tablet, because the tablet is a problem. Okay. Driving through a torrential downpour. This is where I'm going to end this. Driving through a torrential downpour when it's snowing, something like that. The truck loves to pop up all these notifications that also distract us, saying, oh, forward radar is blocked. I'm like, okay, hit the okay button. Then it pops up an instant later and says, you have limited visibility. It says, what is it? Limited visibility. I forgot the error message exactly, but it says you basically have limited visibility. I'm like, yeah, you just told me your front sensor is blocked, so of course you're not going to be able to detect anything. So limited visibility. I get it. You can't see down the road like I can. And then I clear it, and it comes back 30 seconds later, popping up, we still have limited visibility. It's like, I get it. You don't need to constantly tell me, because every time I hear a beep, as I'm driving through it, I'm like looking at the road. I'll slow down if it's a safety thing and a limited visibility. And as I'm doing this, I need to concentrate on the road. But between the tablet and the truck constantly popping up crap that it wants me to look at, oh my gosh, the radar is blocked. You have limited visibility. I'm like, what? No shit, Sherlock. Of course I have limited visibility. I can see it's limited visibility by looking down the road. Of course there's limited visibility. I am looking at it. And then meanwhile, the tablet is like, crashed. If operating CMV, please pull over and connect your tablet to the truck. I'm like, anyway. It's almost comical. It's almost comical if it wasn't so distracting. If it wasn't preventing me from focusing 100% on the road. Anyway. So tomorrow I will most likely leave sometime 5 a.m.-ish. That way, maybe earlier than that. I got to look at it. And I will get to Houston probably around 10 o'clock. I will set my ETA now for 11 o'clock a.m. That way, hopefully, I will be pre-assigned on something after that. Part of me wants to get there earlier, but I know I'll just sit there in traffic. If I get there really early, I will do my drop and then sit there in traffic waiting for a pre-assignment. And I don't want to do that. Anyway, that is the latest. Sorry for the rant. And I'm sure that there's other drivers out there from other companies that are saying, oh yeah, our company does the same thing. It's not just you. The trucks constantly notify us too, and it's annoying. But I'm sure there's people out there that it helps. And I'm sure that there are people out there that appreciate the fact that the tablet crashes. I don't know. I'm sure the other companies out there are just as incommunicative as Schneider is, or Pods is, or whatever on that account. There's so many things I like about this account. There's many things I do like about Schneider. But in this message, in this video, you're going to get some of the rants. Sorry about that. But thanks for watching.